Hey guys, welcome to today's video. I am basically just going to take you through step by step how I set up my vivarium cabinet behind me. It was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of waiting in between steps and like curing and things like that. So I think in total it was like a total of like 2.5 weeks that it took me, but you could probably do it a lot faster if you just skip to some of the steps that I'm going to be talking about in this video. If you're not sure who I am Brandon. I create videos about houseplants and just different projects that I do with houseplants. And if you don't already follow me on Instagram, go do so. I'm Brandon over on Instagram as well. I'm going to try and keep this video as short as I can because I know that I can ramble a little bit, but I like to provide as much context as possible when providing any sort of instructions or anything like that. So yeah, I'm going to try to keep this as quick as possible to give you as much information without the time investment of watching. So if you're looking to do something like this, hopefully this will be helpful, and hopefully I can give you some ideas of how I did things and what I recommend and what I don't recommend doing. I definitely learned a lot from this, so hopefully this will just help anybody that is going to go through this or is looking to learn more about it because they're looking to do a build similar to this. I'll make sure to link all of the products down below as well, or most of the products that I can find online. If not, then I'll definitely be putting it as B-roll in as I talk about it in the video, but I'll make sure to link as many products as possible that I've used because there was a lot of products that I used in this, and it can get quite expensive if you're going to be doing this. So I just want to be transparent in all of the products that I use as well. Okay, so enough of me rambling. Let's get into it. I kind of broke down, and I'm going to be looking at my phone a lot because I kind of broke down all of the steps, step by step, what I did to set this up. So the first thing that I did, or the first thing that I recommend, is if you are looking to do this with a cabinet, I don't know about other types of cabinets, but this one's the Rudsta from IKEA. And I know that you can probably do them with like Milsbo, and I think, you can obviously do it with any type of cabinet that you'd like, preferably metal. I don't think you'd be able to do this with wood because of just the amount of it would just rot if you did it with wood because of the high amount of moisture that builds up in there. But I started out with that, and my IKEA cabinet, so this Rudsta, I've had it for a few years now. I've had it ever since I lived in my apartment like 4 years ago, and I kind of use it as like a regular greenhouse cabinet that are widely known across the plant community and plant hobby. So what I had to do is I just had to take out the plants that were existing in there, and I'll make sure to put a photo beside of what it looked like before. And you take it out and you clean everything because you have to make sure that when you're applying all of these products that you're applying it to a clean slate. Like, you don't want there to be like dust or debris or plant leaves or anything like that. You don't want anything to kind of get in the way of these products setting onto the cabinet itself. And I waited for that to dry. After I did that, I wanted to tape the side panels, which you can see right here that they're painted, but I don't know why I did it, to be honest. So I feel like this is one of those things that I learned that I probably wouldn't do next time, but it is what it is. I did it anyways, but I wanted to put rust protection. That's the next step after cleaning it and getting it ready, is taking it outside to spray rust protection. And you want to do that on the metal because of the amount of moisture that's building up in there. You don't want it to corrode or rust over time. And I didn't know if the rust protection spray actually would damage the glass in any sort of way. So what I did is I took paper and I just cut it to the size that I needed for the glass panels on the sides, and then I taped them up or whatever, so that when I sprayed that rust protection spray, it wouldn't damage the glass. I probably didn't need to do that since I was going to be covering it up anyways with the black paint, but I did it anyways. And if you want, I would only recommend it, I guess, if you're only going to be doing the back. So you'll see that my cabinet has the sides as well. You can't really see this side, but I put moss and a hardscape. I wrapped it around the entire side and the back. So if you're going to be doing that, you probably don't have to worry about taping it off. But what I actually did is I took the doors off, and how I had to do that is I had to take the top off. So if you're building this for the first time, maybe do the rust protection spray on all of the metal as you're building it, or before you actually assemble the components, spraying them all down beforehand. I feel like that would be really helpful to be able to do that, but you obviously don't want to waste too much of that rust spray on the areas where there isn't going to be a lot of moisture buildup, so you probably don't need to do like the undersides of the cabinet or like the sides or like the outside of it. So do what you want with that. So I don't regret doing it at all, because I just want to make sure that I can keep this cabinet for as long as possible. So I did that, and then so I took it outside, I sprayed it down. I think you have to wait like 2 hours or something, or maybe it was like 30 minutes. I can't remember what it says, but on the container, like the spray can, it tells you how long to wait in between coats, and I did 2 coats. I feel like that was enough. So after you do that, I feel like you have to wait at least 24 hours for it to fully cure, even after like the second coat. So I feel like, sorry, my cats are running around fighting right now. What you have to do is you have to wait 24 hours in between the 2 coats and then it fully curing. So you don't have to wait 24 hours before coats, but you have to wait 24 hours after the last coat before you can start working with other products, I'm pretty sure. Or at least that's what I did. Just follow the instructions that are on the rust protection spray. And what I started to do is I actually started to fill the gaps, or like inside the cabinet. I flipped it on its back, I took it out back and put it on in the grass, and I got silicone. And this is just like the cheaper stuff that you can get with the silicone gun. But what I did is I covered all of the gaps, and it was on the bottom, along the sides, along the metal panels on the back. So you want to do that to be able to hold in all of the moisture, and you don't want any of it escaping anyways, because I don't know, you want it to be high humidity in there, and you want it to hold the humidity well enough, especially if you're not going to be having a humidifier or any sort of like misting spray in there. I used about 2 or 3 tubes of the silicone, and Sam, stop, buddy. And I did use more afterwards using the Aquarium Silicone, but I'll talk about that more when I get to that step. The next step, I definitely learned from it. I really wanted to make sure that this thing did not leak, because I didn't want, you know, water pooling on my floor, and I just didn't want to ruin the flooring, and you know what I mean? Like, nobody wants them to leak. So I just wanted to really make sure that I sealed it correctly. So after the caulking, what I did is I actually installed the front glass, and I don't know if you can see, but there is one of the IKEA shelves that the cabinet comes with, and I installed it to the front. So that's going to be really what holds in the substrate. And what I recommend doing is not using regular sealant or like the regular silicone that I was using for the rest of the cabinet for that, because the substrate will come in contact with whatever is applied there. So you want to make sure that there's no chemicals that the substrate can kind of soak up. I could just be overthinking it, and you can probably get away with that, but this is just my thinking and why I did it. But I used Aquarium Safe silicone for that, which is more expensive, but just the peace of mind that I got from using it made me feel better. And what I did is I installed it to the front using silicone, and down at the bottom, and made sure that I had like a heavy object that I could put inside to kind of push the glass right up to the front so that it couldn't fall over, you know what I mean? Because it does take a little bit of time for it to cure. And I did use a lot of that because I wanted to make sure that the glass really stuck, especially if I'm going to be flipping it on its back to do some of the steps that I need to do in the future. So after that step, I essentially let it cure for 24 hours. Okay, so after that, what I did is I applied liquid rubber, and it's this like pond sealant stuff that I bought on Amazon. I don't necessarily recommend using it, but the reason why I bought it is because I wanted to make it a little bit more leak proof. I really didn't want this thing leaking all over my floor and damaging my floor, so that's why I bought it. But what I did is I applied a few layers. The first coat I think I did, and then like 5 or 6 hours later after that, I did a second coat, and I did it all on the bottom and on the back. And yeah, like I don't think I needed it, to be honest, because it still didn't leak proof my cabinet. I did it several times, and I applied like thicker layers of it, and I made sure that it was all dry, and it takes like 5 or 6 days for it to fully cure. So like I waited a long time in between all of these steps to make sure that it wasn't going to leak on me. And I brought it inside. I did 2 leak tests after 2 separate applications of it, and it still leaked on me. So that did not work whatsoever. So I do not recommend using that, because I mean, unless you're a professional and you know exactly what you're doing, maybe use it. But honestly, what I found to be that worked best for me, to be honest, was just installing a pond liner, like an actual like plastic pond liner down at the bottom, and then you can buy like like patch tape for like pools and stuff, or like patch kits or whatever, you can use that. I used the Gorilla Glue tape. I don't know the exact name of it. I'll make sure to put a photo or like b-roll of what that looked like of the product that I used. But I ended up using that to leak proof my cabinet, and that's what I recommend doing, to be honest, because just using the silicone and the liquid rubber did not work for me. So if you're really nervous about it leaking, then you can definitely do that. After that, what I did is I actually applied all of the weather stripping. So I applied one strip right here, one strip on this side, and then almost like that like plasticky like flat rubber weather stripping that you can get. So I applied that in between the doors just to hold in as much humidity as possible, since there are kind of gaps and cracks in between the doors. So I made sure to weather strip those, because obviously you can't use silicone or else you wouldn't be able to open and close the doors. So that's what I just recommend doing with that step there to keep in the moisture. So one thing that I did, and I know a lot of people already actually do this for the regular IKEA cabinets, but I drilled a hole in the back to put one of those grommets, which, like, if you're not familiar with what a grommet is, it's essentially those things that you feed cords and wires through that you see like drilled into like a desk or something if you work in an office. So I bought a grommet, and with the right drill bit that it needed from Amazon, which I was so happy to be able to find that, because I feel like it's so hard to find the grommet that you want and then find the drill bit that fits it, and so it just made that so easy to be able to do that. And it was the right type of grommet that I was looking for too. The reason why I did this is because I needed to be able to feed the wires from the lights, and I knew that I wanted to install a humidifier in there as well, which I have installed on the side. There's a tube that's running up the back, which I'll show you b-roll of like how that's installed, but there's a tube running up the back and kind of coming out the corner, this corner. I have the little spout kind of coming through that hole there. So that's just what I recommend you do. I put a little bit of silicone around it just to make sure that it stayed in place, because the grommet was a little bit smaller than the hole itself. So you just want to make sure that you silicone it in place just so that it doesn't go anywhere. But that step was super easy. So because I used the side panels, or like I used all sides of the cabinet essentially, what I had to do is I had to paint the sides black on the outside, and I do recommend doing this on the outside. I know some people, I watched a ton of YouTube videos on how other people have set up their setups, but I know another creator, I can't remember her name, but she painted the inside and then realized afterwards that it was pulling off all of the paint, whether it be from like humidity, or I think it was from like the spray foam that she used to build the hardscape. But she just didn't recommend you do it on the inside. Her thinking was to be able to do it on the inside so the outside was like still kind of shiny or whatever, which if she didn't do that and learn from that, I probably would have done the exact same thing. So yeah, if you're going to be doing the sides of the cabinet, make sure you're probably going to want to paint the sides black, because you don't want to see the spray foam, because it just doesn't look as pretty. But if you're not going to be doing the sides like what I did, and you're only going to do the back where you see, you'll be fine to not paint it anyways. So you'll be good to go. So after I did that, essentially what I did is I brought the cabinet back inside, and I planned out where all of the like cork bark, and I used plant pots, like just like normal nursery pots or whatever, to kind of plan out where I wanted the unevenness in the hardscape in the back to be, because I mean, you're going to be going through a lot of spray foam for this anyways, but you want to make sure that you're using you don't want to use that much spray foam if you need like bigger areas, or like you want it to look uneven because you want it to look like it's like in nature, you know what I mean? So that's what I used, is plant pots to kind of just like elevate the areas that I needed to elevate, and then I was good to go. And then I just spray foamed around them. I brought it outside, and then I applied the spray foam on the back. And one thing that I did learn is that this stuff does start to cure quite quickly. Like, it does start to dry off quite quickly. So my recommendation would be to do it in smaller areas, whether it be like half of the cabinet or a quarter of the cabinet at a time or whatever. Really apply that spray foam, and then make sure that as it's still kind of sticky, because the stuff gets very, very sticky, that's when you apply the moss or whatever you're going to be putting on the back. So I didn't want to buy like more silicone or more adhesive to put on the back to apply it afterwards. I really wanted to do it while the foam was still sticky and still wet. And yes, there was some moss that fell off afterwards or whatever, but like there's nothing that a few pins can't fix. So that's just what I recommend, is doing it while it's wet, because it just makes it so much easier and it sticks so much better. Another recommendation that I recommend, especially when you're applying the spray foam to build up the hardscape, is let the like sides dry. When I did the back, I had to flip it on its sides when I was doing the other sides to make sure that the moss didn't kind of like fall off as I was applying it, and I didn't want the like spray foam to look like it was like dripping, or I'm not sure if it would have, but I just didn't want it ruining like how it looked. So I wanted to make sure that the whatever side that I did was fully dry before I kind of flipped the cabinet. So I did that, and I flipped it on both sides, waited for them to dry or whatever in between every side, and then I was good to go with that. Okay, so after I built the sides and I kind of built the hardscape and made sure that everything was okay, I did use, like, I had a really big roll of wire that I have at home just from like other projects, and I cut so many, like, essentially they're not like bobby pins, but they're like essentially like bobby pins that I created, where I cut a bunch of pieces and then I wrapped them into like a U shape so that I could get any of the areas that I needed to that were kind of falling off, or the moss just didn't adhere to the spray foam. So I made sure to create a bunch of those and then just kind of get those spots where it didn't really stick or that I needed to fill in afterward. That worked out really well. Like, I don't even know how many pins are in there or like how many pieces of wire are in there kind of keeping the moss in place, but there's a lot. It's crazy how many I had to create, and my fingers were like killing me after creating them just from bending the wire so many times. But I definitely recommend that, because that's gonna make sure that all of the moss stays in place. Next, what I did is I brought the cabinet inside, so it was all ready. I wanted to make sure that I used any sort of like chemicals and stuff where I was like spraying anything or using anything that kind of stunk outside, because I just didn't want it hurting my cats. I didn't want to be breathing that stuff in anyways. I know that you technically can use it, and like, these are things are made to be used inside your home, but I just figured why not do it outside, because it's nice anyways, and it can, you know, breathe, and I don't have to smell all the bad smells of these products. So that's basically what I did. So the lights that I'm using in this cabinet are from Mother Life Official. I've definitely seen them on other creators that have created, that have made these cabinets. They're using the exact same lights. They sent me over the Plant Spectrum 16 lights, which those are the ones that I wanted to use for these anyways. The reason why I wanted to use them is because they are completely waterproof. I wanted to make sure that the lights in this cabinet weren't going to cause any sort of like fires or sparks because of the amount of humidity that's going to be like in the cabinet. So I wanted to make sure that I got a waterproof full spectrum grow light. And just from other people using them on YouTube, or like people that I've seen that have built very similar setups, they've used the Mother Life ones, and to be honest, I was going to get them anyways, because I'm not going to compromise on the safety and like being worried about my house burning down or anything like that. So I was always going to get them Plant Spectrum 16 lights, because that's basically what they're used for, right? Like, they're sleek in design, which they match the cabinet perfectly. They're nice and black, and they have like an aluminum casing around them so they don't get too hot. They're totally worth it, especially if you're going to be building something like this, because if you have pets, a family, just your house in general, like, you don't want any sort of hazards like that happening. So they sent over the lights with the wall mounts, which I'm very glad that I asked for the wall mounts, because what I did is, instead of drilling it into the top of the cabinet, which that's how they are normally installed, is through like a drill, or like that's how they're normally installed, is by drilling them into something, because they go into a wall or like a ceiling or something. But the wall mounts that it came with were perfect, because I bought these black magnets that I installed with super glue around the wall mounts, and then they were perfect to, and like so easy to install afterwards, like, and I could move them around if I didn't like where I initially put the lights. And that's just one thing that I definitely recommend, is that if you are going to be putting these lights or any sort of waterproof lights in your cabinets, is to install them with like a strong magnet, because it's so much easier to move things around if it doesn't work where you initially put it. If you're using a strong adhesive or like drilling into something, those are like almost permanent solutions, or not as easily fixable solutions. So I would definitely recommend using magnets to be able to install them, because it's so much easier to just like pull it off, move it around, and kind of go about your day. So thank you so much to Mother Life Official for sending them over to me. So the next thing that I need to do is kind of build the bottom part where the substrate was going to be. And the first kind of step to that is making sure that you have a drainage layer. So you don't just want to be dumping in the substrate that you're going to be using down at the bottom, because then it'll really be, if there's any sort of collection of water, then it'll be sitting in that water for so long. It's not going to be able to evaporate as easy, and it's going to be very muddy, and it's just going to be gross. So what I recommend doing is adding that drainage layer. And luckily I used leca for like all of my houseplants, so I had so much of it on hand. So that's what I used as the drainage layer. Plus it's very light, so it's not going to make the cabinet super heavy. I don't think these cabinets can hold a lot of weight on the bottom anyways, so it's just best to use the lightest like thing possible that you have for that drainage layer. That's really going to be where that collection of water goes, if there is any sort of collection of water that happens. And the leca is going to be nice because it feeds it, it wicks it back up into the substrate, so it's a win-win. And then so this is probably a little bit overkill, but because I was so nervous about this thing leaking or like collecting water, I added like a little siphon thing over in the left hand corner, and I have it feeding through down to the drainage layer, and I kind of use my soldering iron to kind of poke a few holes down at the bottom just so that some water could feed through it. But essentially what would happen is that if this thing ever collected too much water, which I don't think could happen, what I could do is just install the tube that I bought where I installed the siphon down at the bottom, and I could just pump out any of the water. So if there was any collection of water, I could kind of tilt the cabinet and then I could pump out any water. Probably overkill, and I'll probably never use it, but I just liked that peace of mind to be able to have that fail-safe in case I ever did need it. After I installed the bottom drainage layer, to make sure that it wasn't mixing and stuff, what I did is I laid down a layer of fiberglass screen. And you want to make sure that you're using fiberglass or some sort of like plasticky type of screen. You don't want to be using a metal screen, because metal can corrode over time and cause rust, and you just don't really want to deal with that. So I highly recommend using like some sort of like fiberglass or some sort of plastic screening to go over that, just so that it eliminates any sort of chance of any sort of corroding or rusting happening. So after that, what I did is I laid down a layer of horticultural charcoal, and what that does, or what I've been told it does, is that it essentially filters out any toxins in the soil. I'm not sure if that's actually what it does, but I'm just going based on what I heard online and what other people have installed, so I'm hoping that's what it does. And yeah, I did it. So if you know more about it, let me know down in the comments to let me know if it does do that or not, but that's what I installed. And then the substrate. So the substrate that I used in here, I know a lot of people use like a mixture of like cocoa coir and like sphagnum moss and like cocoa chips and stuff like that. I did not use that, even though I was going to. I was going to do that like mixture of both of those things, or like all three of those things. But after chatting with someone online that's done a few of these builds, they recommended that I use a bioactive substrate. So I'm just going to read off my phone basically what I read about the bioactive substrates, because I'm not an expert at all. But bioactive substrates create a self-sustaining ecosystem within the terrarium or vivarium. It helps springtails and isopods, which I have in there as well as my cleanup crew, to break down waste, reducing the need for manual cleaning and providing healthier environment for both the future cleanup crew and plants within it. And that's definitely one of the things, because I wanted to create this thing that I didn't have to constantly be cleaning or constantly be dealing with. I wanted to make sure that I kind of created its own little ecosystem within there so that I didn't have to do those things. So I bought a little bit of more expensive type of substrate, and I'll make sure to put a photo or b-roll of the substrate that I used. It was highly recommended from Instagram to get that one, and then I did read up on it, and I did watch some YouTube videos on it to like see what they had to say and learn about it a little bit more. So and that was the best, in my opinion, that I had somewhat easily access to. It is expensive if you're looking to get it, but to be honest, I didn't want to cheap out with this, because I didn't want to be cleaning this thing constantly. And then I started adding my plants. So not all of the plants that I have or that I filmed planting in there are the ones that are currently in there. So since initially filming some of the B-roll for this, I've gotten plants from NXC Plants. They sent over like a bunch of plants for me to put it in there. So since then I've added those. And then I do have somebody else from Instagram, like another plant friend, the Sprouting Botanist. He's going to be sending me some more terrarium plants as well. I love this plant community so much because everyone is so willing to just send over cuttings of whatever you need. I'm going to be putting those in whenever I get those. That was mainly like the most fun part of this, I feel like, was adding the plants and just designing like where everything was going and just picturing like how it would grow in and how it would fill in. So that was kind of the most fun part of this, I feel like. And then the last thing essentially that I had to do was just topping it off with moss. So what I did is I just took the frog moss and the forest moss that I bought from Amazon, and I just created almost like a layer of moss on top. And I didn't cover every single spot in moss because I am going to be I was going to be planting some plants in there. So I made sure to leave some areas open, but that was honestly the last step that I had to do for that. So after I planted everything, the substrate came to me dry, so I needed to water it. And what I had ended up doing was I make this stuff called, like, I know other people call it like BIOS juice, and it's basically a mixture of BIOS nutrients and then water, and then letting it sit for like 24 to 48 hours before you put it in your plants. But I essentially created that BIOS juice or whatever, and then I watered the substrate with it down at the bottom. Really what the BIOS does, and really why I added that BIOS into the water, was because I really wanted to introduce really good bacteria to the bioactive substrate. And I know that I talked with Aaron, the owner of BIOS Nutrients, and he said that the isopods and the springtails would be fine. I made sure to water the substrate down below with that. And then literally the last thing was adding the cleanup crew. So I'm filming this probably about a week after I fully finished this, and I wanted to let, I don't know, some of the plants establish, and I wanted the substrate to grow some of like that good bacteria and stuff before I started introducing any sort of cleanup crew. But the cleanup crew that I got were, I can't remember the exact name, I'll put the b-roll on the video, but they are like a lava form of isopods where they're orange and black. Those are the coolest ones that I could find in the local pet store near me. And I added the isopods, and then they also came with springtails, so I didn't have to buy them in separate containers or whatever. They already just kind of came together. And yeah, I just added them to the substrate down at the bottom, and then I bought some more cork bark to kind of put down at the bottom because they do like to hide under it. So that's definitely one recommendation, is making sure that you have like some sort of cork bark down at the bottom. And tonight actually I'm going to be going to the pet store to go get fish food, and then that's basically what's going to be their main protein source moving forward. So I got them as a cleanup crew, obviously, so that they can clean up any sort of like mold or decaying matter in the cabinet, but you can't guarantee that there's always going to be enough for them to feed on. And you want to make sure that the isopods that you get are ones that don't reproduce as fast, unless you're planning on like feeding them a lot more, because if you get ones that reproduce fast, they eat a lot more, and that could mean that they eat your plants. So I have some expensive plants in there, so I really don't want them munching on my leaves. So I got the next slowest ones that I could find at the local pet store, and I'll probably just end up putting some like fish food or like vegetable scraps or whatever in there whenever I think about it, but for the most part they should be okay in there. I honestly want to thank all the people that have kind of consulted me on this too, because I've been asking a lot of questions, or I've been posting a lot of this on Instagram, and then people have been providing like their expertise based on like how they built theirs and what they recommended. Specifically like Benji was the real inspiration for this cabinet, but it's Benji Plant on Instagram and YouTube. Yeah, he was the main inspiration for this, and I loved his setup, so that's kind of the main reason why I did this, is because I just loved his setup so much. And he was so helpful in terms of some of the steps that he took or what he recommended, and I asked him questions all the time, and so he was great with that. And same with NXC Plants. NXC Plants also has a setup. It's very similar in terms of like the overall build, and they had some really good insight that they provided me, and I was constantly asking them questions too. So thank you so much to NXT Plants, and then obviously for sending me 2/3 of my wish list for this cabinet. They sent me in one of the shipments that they sent me a few days ago, so I'm really grateful for them. And then the last one that I would say that really helped me and consulted with me was Eileen Grows Plants. So she was really helpful in terms of, she was the one that was talking to me about the bioactive substrates and which ones she used, and which ones didn't create like as many gnats, and how that whole thing worked, because this is all new to me, right? So I had no clue. So I'm really grateful for all the information that she gave me. And she also put me down the rabbit hole of all the different isopod types that you can get, and like putting me onto this like rubber ducky cubaris isopods, and like they're so cute. They look like little rubber ducks, but they're very expensive. But she was so helpful in terms of providing me all of the insight that she had, and sending me reels and sending me posts and explaining things to me that I didn't understand. So thank you so much to those guys. And then I have not received them yet, but I am expecting them at some point from the Spreading Botanist. He is sending me some plants that I can put in here as well. And one of the ones that I'm like super stoked about is the peacock moss, because of like, it's not bioluminescent, but it looks like it. Like I don't know, it just has like a shimmer to it, and it's like almost like a blue color. So I'm super excited about getting all of the plants that he's going to be sending me. So thank you in advance, I guess, if this is coming out before he sent them to me. So yeah, that's basically what I did. It was a lot of work, and there was a lot of waiting in between steps, which I feel like you could probably get away with some of that waiting. Like you could probably do a lot of things and plan it a little bit better than what I did, to be able to say like, okay, if this needs X amount of time to cure, then like I could do these things in between or whatever. So my recommendation is to be, if you have like a time crunch to get this done, plan it out. Look at how long it takes to cure things, and like just think about like how you're going to be installing this, and then maybe you can plan it out a little bit better. So it took me roughly about 2.5 weeks from start to finish to be able to do this, but a lot of that was just the trial and error with that like liquid rubber, and the amount of like wait time that it took for that to cure, and leak testing it and things like that. So yeah, if you're not going to be using that liquid rubber stuff and just using the like pond liner like what I recommended, it's going to significantly reduce the amount of time that it takes to do this whole setup. But I hope this was helpful. Let me know what your setups are like. I'm really interested, if you have a setup like this, how it differs from mine. So I always like learning about how other people do things. So definitely let me know down in the comments down below. And if you're looking for, I have a whole highlighted section on my Instagram as well, that I've basically been documenting this whole thing on my stories anyways. So if you don't already follow me on Instagram, go follow me on Instagram. If you don't subscribe to my channel and this is the first time you're seeing one of my videos, or you're just not subscribed yet, make sure to do so. Yeah, I hope this video was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.